Hello, everyone, and welcome. Happy Friday. I'm Jen Elder. I'm the director of the Homeless and Housing Resource Center, and we are so glad you're joining us today for the office hour following our webinar on supporting resiliency in housing and health professionals. Next slide. We'll start with a quick disclaimer that we are funded by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, but the views and opinions expressed today don't necessarily reflect those of SAMHSA or HHS. Next slide. Those who have been with us before know we have a few just quick housekeeping items. We do have American Sign Language interpretation. We're excited for that team to join us today. If you're having any technical issues, feel free to reach out to us using the Q&A feature within Zoom is probably the quickest and easiest way to get a hold of us. Next slide. So all participant lines are muted today. Something different because it's a smaller group and in office hours, the chat feature is enabled today for this office hour. So feel free to use that and to use the Q&A feature to ask your questions and interact with our panelists today. We have the slides available now. You'll see there's not too many of them because today's going to be really discussion based. So we welcome your input. And we will have a recording available in about 1 week on the website. At the end of today's session, we'll have a link and a QR code for a very short evaluation that will redirect you to a certificate of participation. Next slide. So today, as I mentioned, we have the fantastic panel that facilitated our webinar last week. If you missed that and want to go back and view it again or share it with others, we welcome that. The recording is available now on our website. And so today, it's mostly going to be open discussion and Q&A. So next slide. So as I mentioned, we are joined by our partners at the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, Laura Leone and Elizabeth Burden. They are the authors and creators of that Building Resiliency Guide that you heard about last week, and you'll hear about a little bit more today. So we really appreciate their partnership. Their full bios are on our website. The next slide, we are also welcomed by Peggy Hutchinson and Denise Lopez from the Primavera Foundation in Arizona. And so they got to share a lot more about their work during the webinar, and I'm excited for them to help answer all of your questions today. So with that, I believe I am turning it over to Laura to get us started today. Thanks so much, Laura.
Great. Thank you so much, Jen, and welcome everyone to today's office hours. We're so excited to be here to really get a chance to talk through some of the questions that you all posed last week and chimed in your registration for today, as well as just answer anything that comes up. We'll really be looking for information from you all in the chat, so do use that. So as Jen mentioned, we were so excited last week to provide a webinar on this new guide, Building Resiliency, which is a guide for self-care for health and housing professionals. The webinar was really promoting the guide itself, and we talked through a lot of the content. We started with first exploring, why build resilience at all? Thinking about the context for resiliency, and also to know, we realize there's a lot of consequences for individuals and organizations in the field, and being able to kind of think differently about building resiliency. We talked about secondary traumatic stress, compassion fatigue, burnout. We explored things that we can do and consider for our own individual self-care, as well as what can we do to provide supportive supervision. And then, of course, thinking about a larger sort of organizational wellness perspective. And all of this, again, is covered as part of the guide, being able to really use that self-care guide, to think about these sort of 3 levels of self-care and resiliency. We went into further detail around the ABCs of self-care and well-being. We talked through promoting self-care and resilience among supervisees, and really this is where we leaned in to just thinking about supervision as an opportunity to promote healthy working relationships, healthy boundaries, opportunities for growth. And, in a moment, I will also share a wonderful infographic that was created that really leans into this section of the guide. We also in the webinar again talked about that promoting organizational wellness. And so there's organizational ABCs, the ABCs being awareness, balance, connection, that from an organizational or systemic perspective, we also want to keep in mind and really think about those trauma-informed, resilience-oriented, and equitable care that we can provide and work in an environment of safety. So the wonderful part, I think, of last week was also that we were joined by Peggy Hutchison and Denise Lopez, who really gave their perspective from the field about just what does this look like from their perspective working at Primavera Foundation and really thinking about how do you prevent secondary trauma, compassion fatigue, and burnout? How do you think about systemically improving sort of options for staff and building that resilience? And so they shared a lot, and today we're going to continue to share more from their perspective as well as from both Liz and myself, our perspective, working with many organizations and doing this work for as long as we have across the United States. So, that's a little bit of a recap. I do want to also just again highlight sort of this slide here that shows the Promoting Self-Care and Resilience Among Supervisees infographic. We really wanted to have something that highlighted some of these key pieces of information and characteristics, and we're really so happy that this is a part of the resource of the guide, along with so many other resources, both within the guide and at the end of it. So again, check both of those things out. We do have the links in the chat for you all so that you can do that. But without further ado, I really want to just open up the discussion here today. So, the first sort of area that we wanted to talk about is, and this came up quite a lot with the questions that you all raised, was just the idea around the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic and really thinking about how we've had to pivot and adjust and reassess sort of what we're doing in work and what needs to happen. And so, I wanted for us to spend some time talking about that as sort of the first area. And I'll go ahead and open it up and see if anyone has any thoughts.
Well, I can jump in. So in the Southwest, we have something called a haboob, and haboobs are these dust storms, and they start very small and then they just grow and grow and grow, and they become very powerful, and you really can't see anything. And if you're driving on the freeway, you actually need to pull over. And when I think about the onset of COVID in our community, it makes me think about a haboob. And why? Well, we all know across the country, the work that we do that's so critical, it's with people who are very marginalized, people who have experienced accumulated trauma, extremely vulnerable. So those folks were going to be, we knew they were going to be hit first with COVID, right? Don't have access to adequate health care, health equity, access to safe, affordable housing, and just all the support. So we had that. But within our staff, we recruit from the community with whom we work. And so many of our staff have also experienced some of the challenges of living in a society that it does not ensure equity for all. And so we saw that. Then all of a sudden, the government cares about the work we're doing big time. And so we had millions of dollars coming in to support the critical work going on across the country. But we had to really shapeshift to make sure that we could get that money out for eviction prevention, for rapid rehousing, for motels when we couldn't find enough safe, affordable units. And then we had to put all of our pandemic plans in place. I don't know about you all, but our pandemic plan that we had was had to be thrown out. We had to recreate a pandemic plan. We had to fundraise for enough money for all PPE because we wanted to make sure that our staff were healthy and kept kept safe. We also wanted to have PPE for all our participants. So we had all of this stuff happening at one time. Then we had people, our own staff getting COVID, despite the fact that we had all of these safety protocols in place. And so we didn't have enough staff. So we're ramping up services with all this great money coming in to meet the critical need in our community. And staff are having to, figure out how to do that work. And then we had in our organization a hybrid model because we have some programs that are, 24 hours, 7 days a week. So staff had to be on site. We had other staff that could work remotely and then some that worked hybridly. And then how do we do the training if you're working remotely, right? So we had to figure out how to do training, and it really wasn't adequate, especially we also were recruiting people to help fill in where we had staff out or staff had left. So this kind of haboob happened, and we had to, I guess, be extremely or excessively gentle with ourselves while also kind of like really working hard to get it all together. And it was rough. And I can say from a CEO perspective, I also was experiencing my own grief and loss. And what that taught me, an unexpected one, what it taught me that I really needed to change my own leadership style and be a little bit less driven and figure out how to be more gentle and supportive of staff. And that was hard. That was hard because we're spread out in all these different locations. So it was really, really challenging. And did we make mistakes? Absolutely. Did we have unintended consequences? Absolutely. For example, for one program, and it was Denise's program, we decided we were just going to change how we recruited staff. We were going to hire a whole bunch of kind of temp staff. And we also gave incentives to staff. If you can recruit any of your friends or colleagues, you'll get an incentive. And then we had to do, the training had to be remote, or it had to be online, or it had to be with, notebooks. It wasn't adequate, but we were just doing the best that we could. And, it did have unintended consequences. Communication, we weren't communicating as well, right? Because not all programs were meeting together. And then staff were trying to take care of childcare needs or grandchildren needs or parent needs, family needs. So it was a huge haboob, and it was really hard. But I think Denise, and her teams that were doing all the work on the ground, I'd love to hear Denise's perspective on what went well and what didn't go well, and what we have to, we have to own that.
And maybe add, so what are the lessons learned that you're taking forward
Absolutely.
as well about organizational wellness and self-care?
And as you're talking, Peggy, I'm doing a whole recap of the 2 years or however long it's been. It just seems like just yesterday. But yeah, it was a huge roller coaster. It wasn't only, it seemed like daily changes, constant emails. Okay, here's an updated procedure. Here's the updated policy. But it wasn't only within our agency. We also were getting it from our funders. So, we had to listen to both sides, and figuring out what we need to do. But, as Peggy said, we were dealing with getting new staff. We had to do some temps, and we had to, from one day to another, it was like, hey, we're going to be working from home, and now we got to figure out a plan. And that plan was daily, and the training, that was difficult. For something that you only know to do in person, and especially when you're meeting with clients in person and all of a sudden you're not, it's all by phone. Just building that rapport, that was difficult. We saw a lack of compliance during that time. And we lost a lot of our veterans because of that, because that rapport wasn't there. Geez, there was so much. Other than procedures, other than policies, the training part, we had staff that were with us already that knew, how to run our program. And then now they have to learn how to run a program during COVID. and now remotely. Then we're bringing on staff that are completely new to our program. So trying to train them while we're training ourselves, that was difficult. And we're still going through it. We've been back in the office since September, and we're still going through some of the, oh, you know what, we need to focus here. Here's where we need to do some training. And not only with the new staff members that were, out or started with us during COVID, even with our previous staff members. And I'm always saying that, our pre-COVID staff and our during COVID staff, because there's quite a difference. We're seeing it in our files, we're seeing it in communication with our clients. We recently went through an audit, and during that time I was realizing, okay, these are the areas that we need to focus on. And I'm bringing it all as a whole now, instead of focusing on when you started, where were we at during that time. I'm just looking at it as everybody's new again, and let's take a look at our procedures.
So Denise, I'm going to ask you to think about as well. So again, with all of these challenges for both of you, what does that mean in your view today? What has changed in your organization related to wellness and self-care and balance and all of that? What did you learn through all of those challenges that you're carrying forward?
I've learned that although we've had all these challenges professionally, we also have to remember that we all have a personal life, and outside of our work, a lot of our staff has some personal things going on, even with myself. And we had to just be there for each other. We had to remember that, outside of here, we're human. We all have things going on. We had to talk about, and we had to increase our supervision during that time, and it was, before it was monthly, it started becoming weekly. And then when we started seeing some difficulty, if we had to, we made it daily, even if it was a quick check-in every morning to talk about what was going on. For myself, during that time, I wasn't a supervisor. I was actually a case manager. So, dealing with the clients and and I was a senior, trying to provide guidance, and be there for staff, and also talking to my supervisor at that time and letting them know what's going on here. This is what we need to focus on. And now transitioning into, the supervisor position, that's helped me, to see, okay, I know what we did during that time. I know what we needed to focus on during that time. Now we need to start putting some procedures and policies in place, start constantly reminding about, hey, take a minute for yourself, do some deep breathing. If you feel like you're getting overwhelmed, let's talk about it. Don't just keep going.
Yeah, it sounds like to me, going back to that infographic, those 4 points of offering feedback and reassurance, providing new ideas and brainstorming, helping to problem solve, and doing small things to help reduce stress. That's not how, you didn't go through those 4 bullet points, and yet I think it sounds like those are the kinds of strategies that you were using to try and make it through what was chaotic.
Yes.
at minimum time.
Yeah, and similarly, I think Peggy, you kind of said this in a different way, but like, you were building the ship while you sailed it, right? And you still are. We all are, right? We're all still kind of in it to some extent, and also learning as we go. So, I'd love to kind of hear, you mentioned, Denise, about the supervision, and that you had to kind of adjust the sort of touch points that people had, that sort of support. And I guess I'm wondering where you're at right now as far as that sort of lay of the land of supervision. Where do you think you're kind of going to be in sort of the next year ahead with how you're providing supervision?
Now, since we returned, we were doing, we had tried to go back to monthly supervision, but since we've seen there's, quite a bit that we need to focus on, I've switched it to bi-weekly supervision.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to help. There's so much going on that a month later, that doubles, but doing it bi-weekly, that's helped because we're tackling what's happening right now, coming up with a plan, following up in 2 weeks. And if it's not working, let's discuss it and come up with something else. My biggest thing I always tell staff, do not wait until supervision. We don't have to wait to talk about things during supervision. But you know, if we need to talk about it sooner, we will. But increasing our supervision time has helped a lot. It's helped us focus on our clients better and provide the treatment that they need, especially with housing, you know, and where are our barriers, and tackling that sooner than later.
And I would echo, you know, sort of nationally what I'm seeing, and sort of that recommendation is that the supervision does seem to need to happen more frequently than monthly. Either weekly or biweekly seems to be sort of the national trend right now, as we move forward. Again, to your point, you know, bringing in sort of a variety of different things into supervision. And again, in the guide, we kind of talk about a structure for supervision that for a portion of the time, we do focus, we encourage you to focus on self-care as part of supervision, in addition to some of the clinical as well as administrative, you know, tasks, or the sort of person-facing or client-facing, consumer-facing tasks, as well as some of the other things that are on hand. So yeah, and did you want to?
Can I say one thing, Peggy, before you jump in, that has to do with that time? Because I think sometimes it seems counterintuitive to spend more time doing supervision because we're also pressed for time. And yet I think spending that extra hour a month actually saves us some time, right? And Denise, you were saying that, because if you're able to deal with things and address issues as they're kind of coming up closer to real time, then that's less fires to put out, more proactive work. And so it's spending the time saves the time.
Yeah.
Sorry, Perry, you go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, and I'll jump off on that. I found that I was connecting more in between, you know, kind of one-on-ones with the senior leaders. Now, some of it was because we had to learn how to do contact tracing, you know, internally. Like, whoever thought we'd have to learn how to do contact tracing? But and also, you know, changing our COVID policies based on data we were learning, et cetera. I'll say something else that I started doing, which was very uncomfortable for me. I started doing these COVID updates, and I brought in personal stuff that I never would have done before. So I got feedback on that, like, oh, that was really helpful. Like, I'm kind of a nerd about health and wellness, but I like keep it to myself. So I would share a little bit about that, you know, like, oh, you know, or I'd end it with a question, what are you doing, you know, to take care of yourself this weekend? And, you know, it was just an email, or, you know, and it went out. And then if I saw staff, I would kind of ask them about that. So trying to kind of, you know, make that personal. We talk about the personal is political, but the personal is also relational, right? And it's community. So try to do some of that. And I would think there's nothing else to say. And my, the COO who retired, but she'd say, well, you need to send another update. And I'd say, I don't have anything to say. And she'd say, no, you need to send another one. And she said, just send it. And so she was challenging me, and I'm like, ugh, I'm like sick of hearing myself. But then I found that, you know, I don't like repetition, but repetition is important in the midst of a pandemic or a crisis, right? So that was a learning for me. The other was challenging all of us around assumptions versus knowledge. Because it was so hard to communicate, we needed to learn how to over communicate. And I'm a person that likes nuance, right? And so I had to figure out, are people gonna, I'm sick of hearing that over communication, but I learned that no, actually people need to hear it. And I would challenge myself around assumptions versus knowledge. How do I know that? And try to share that with others. Because again, when we're in crisis, we often go to what's easiest to explain. And it may be assumption, and we may not even know it, it's an assumption. So really, and then again, that challenges us to challenge our communication style and skills, et cetera. So those are some of the changes that just kind of from a personal perspective, I was trying to challenge myself. And then get other people to challenge me. You know, I've never lived through a pandemic. My grandma who did is not alive. She died, you know, when I was a kid. I didn't have anybody to ask, right? So how do we strengthen communication and relationships, whether we're working in the same place with masks and PPE or whether we're working remotely? That's challenging.
So Peggy, you've mentioned several times that you challenge yourself. Where did you give yourself grace?
I started reading a lot more poetry. So there's this awesome poem by an Irish poet, John O'Donoghue, and it's great. And he talks about being excessively gentle with yourself. And so as I practiced that with myself, and I was going through my own grieving process and loss, oh, heaven forbid that I would share that with anybody else, but I pushed myself to share and share that with others who had told me they were going through their own grieving or, you know, illness or struggling with family members or loved ones. So I shared, you know, I just opened up and shared because, you know, in the end of the day, we're human beings, right? And we're on this earth so short. And so caring for each other, we have to care for each other to be able to care for our community, right? And so I tried to do that. I'd say to I had my mantras. One was be excessively gentle. The other was I'm doing the best I can. And then I'd say, well, are you really? You know, are you? So those are a couple of my mantras. And then I would share those with others in case they were helpful.
Thanks, Peggy.
So one of the questions that has come through is really about how do we think about resilience building and self-care focus during the workday. And in the guide, we talk about, you know, self-care, you know, in addition to different kinds of relaxation techniques or things to do to take a pause, refocus, even, you know, other things such as whether or not we take a lunch, the nutrition that we keep, getting up and moving our bodies, the structure of our workday, in the different tasks that we do, as well as our time management options are all things that play a role in resilience building and in time and in self-care. So I was wondering if we could kind of talk about ways that we can encourage people to do and focus on all of these different areas, right? Not just deep breathing and progressive muscle relaxation, which are two of my favorite things, but, you know, in addition to that, what are the other kinds of ways that we can really structure our building of resilience, you know, boundaries and so on? Anyone want to chime in first?
I can do that.
Yeah, thanks.
So one of the things with our staff, because, you know, I'm always hearing there's not enough time. And when I'm talking about, you know, making sure you're taking care of yourself, taking your breaks, lunch, it's important. It's a need. My advice to them sometimes is like, okay, well, if that's tough for you I know we get busy and we just keep going. You know, we follow our calendar all day. Why not place it in your calendar? Follow your calendar of, you know what, during this time I'm taking lunch and that's it. I'm not stopping myself and I'm going to take that break, you know, to make sure that happens. I mean, any other thing that you feel, okay, this is my time to take a break and have some me time, you know, whether it be lunch or not, just place it in your calendar. I'm big on calendars. To me, it gets broken from time to time, but you know, it's just being able to be flexible and not overwhelm yourself in that way. Because I know I have staff that their calendar, you know, something goes out of a different direction, and it's I can't handle that, you know. But we're talking about it. We're talking about, okay, how do we be flexible? How do we deal with change? Because in this whole during COVID, you know, there was a lot of change, and that's my biggest thing. If you were not able to deal with change prior to COVID, you should be an expert now. But if not, then we got to continue to work on it, because, you know, change is hard, and I get it. You know, it's not easy. But I think the biggest thing is just being flexible with your time, being flexible with yourself. Whatever you feel is I need to take, do some self-care for myself, whether it be reading, whether it be I need 5 minutes right now. And I'm glad that Peggy talked about, how she shares some poems, because that's definitely something that she did with me, and that has helped me. So I know whether I'm at work or not, and I'm having a tough time, I will turn to those and read them, and that helps me. And it's got me comfortable to be able to share and open up to others when I read something and I'm like, oh, they're going through this. Guess what? Here's something that's helped me. Maybe it'll help you. So just keeping in mind of what other people are going through, whether it's work-wise or professionally, just a constant reminder of, hey, take care of yourself, get some good rest this weekend, have a good night, do something good for yourself. If it's just little things like that that you're constantly throwing out there and letting them know that you do care and their well-being is your number one priority, I think that says a lot, and that goes a long way.
Yeah, thanks for all of those comments and suggestions. And, I was kind of chuckling a little bit as I heard you say, like, oh, sort of that immediate reaction is, I don't have time for this. Like, there is no time to build, and we have too many things, too many priorities. How do I fit this in, or how do I restructure? And this can work for other people, but not for me, not for this organization. And the reason I'm chuckling is because I cannot tell you how many people and organizations everywhere say that, right? Like, there's this level at which there's a burden within our field that we feel, and that we feel like that's on our shoulders, and that to take time or to readjust priorities, or even just to shift how we work, kind of optimizing that seems like too big of a stretch sometimes based on those other burdens. Yet when there's time spent to doing that, the payoff is so immense. So and it makes a world difference. The good news is, and I, speaking from experience, and I know I see Liz nodding her head and smiling, because we see that when people put this time and effort in, both as individuals and definitely as organizations, those who feel the most burdened can do this and can do it well and really have a lot of success from it. Liz, did you want to share anything further about that?
No, I think other than I think you hit the nail on the head around, for me personally, it's like, yeah, that works for everybody else, but won't work for me. And I like how Peggy talks about challenging yourself. I have to challenge myself to remember, oh yeah, doing a couple minutes of deep breathing actually does work for me. I just have to remember to do it. And so Denise, this notion of putting it in your calendar, or we have our smartphones, right? Can you set yourself a reminder that, once every couple hours you're going to get up and stretch, or you're going to do some deep breathing? I have to schedule it kind of like you said, Denise, or I'll forget to do it. And so I think that, thinking that I'm unique gets me in trouble. that these strategies just won't work for me. No, they will. I just have to put them into practice and remind myself to do it. Yeah.
One of the things I've learned is I need to practice what I preach, because I'm constantly reminding staff, lunch and breaks. And, the good thing about my team is that, they can't do it now because it's too hot here. But before, they would, when we would gather, go through each suite and say, hey, you want to go take a walk? And they will go together and take that break. But now it's just too hot to do that. So they take a little walk inside the office if they need to. But I'm also learning how to listen to myself, and especially when I'm getting frustrated or something's not going right, I'm like, okay, maybe it's time for a break. I got to walk away for a bit and come back. And you're right, it helps. We may think that little bit away or time away, it doesn't work. It does. It's important to take your breaks.
I think, as leaders and supervisors, people watch us, right? Mm-hmm. Our behaviors speak probably louder than words. And I noticed several folks have put in, walks, and I've seen our staff will take a break and walk nearby, have a walk. Somebody said walking meetings. I've seen some of our staff have walking meetings outside. That's really important. One of the things I learned when one of my first professional-ish jobs, that my supervisor said, and it really, really resonated with me, and is we're significant but not essential. And I think that's a really important reminder in the work that we do, that the type of work that we do, that we're significant and not essential. And people really do have, no matter how much their trauma, they've got a lot of skills and they have a lot of resources. And we're partnering with them. We're not doing it for, we're partnering together, right? So I think that's real important. The other thing I do, just because it gets me up, and instead of sending an email, I'll kind of get up and walk. I mean, in the building where I am, obviously not all our staff are in one building, but I'll just get up and walk over. In fact, my executive assistant's on the other side. I often just go over and get up and walk and talk to her because it gets me moving. Same with the other staff that work directly with me. And then I think joking, I mean, that helps me chill a little bit. So if I can make a joke, and even if it's about myself, but it gets us laughing, I think that also does something in our brain to help us kind of chill and, kind of disconnect from the stress or the intensity of our work. So that's helpful. I saw somebody said, we play Wordle in our office. So a lot of you are like lifting up great ideas. And that's really important. And asking each other, what are you going to do this weekend for fun, right? What are you looking forward to kind of help people remind people, no, not work. I'm talking about health and well-being for you.
Yeah, I know some of the things that have worked really well for organizations are looking around, again, how they optimize the workday, how they structure certain things like meetings, for example, really taking sort of a critical look at what meetings are necessary. Are there any that can be combined or reduced? Are there ways that you can structure the meeting? Have an agenda that's sent out ahead of time. Things to make it run a little bit quicker, right? When we think about kind of shifts and adjustment for time management, again, as part of resiliency and as a part of improving our workday, finding times to have, depending on the work that you do and how you can do it, are there ways to nest like some focus time versus, some other things that you have to do throughout the day? If you're going to do a home, a visit out in the field with an individual, or, can you group those together? Can you structure your day in a different way that's going to help re-energize? Even thinking about when the time of the day that you are sort of your most optimal, and thinking about what are the kinds of activities you can do during that time of the day versus other times. And if there's a time that you're feeling more drained, then trying to put in certain job tasks or activities that will lend itself to feeling a little bit more drained, but still you can do it. So really thinking in a very critical way around the structure has helped.
And I think that individuals can do that for themselves. And I also think that organizations and we as managers can help do that. One of the many things I love about the National Council is that there are a couple of blocks of focus time that are organization-wide that the leadership has put on our calendars, right? And that, going back to Peggy, what you said about the modeling, that we want some time blocks that are time for your thinking work or for your, unplugged work, if you will. You're not answering emails, you're not doing other things, that you're focusing on some of the deeper work, so that then modeled for me, I try and put those kinds of blocks in my day every day. I know that I need to block first thing in the morning for thinking. I think I may have said this during the webinar, that's when I'm freshest and when I can write or the like, and resist the urge to make that the block when I'm answering emails when I first get up, because then I'm putting all my energy to answering emails when that's probably something I could do in one of those low energy times that Laura talks about. But that's the email answering. I don't have to think a whole lot. I can respond. And everyone has a different rhythm. I think the challenge that folks will talk about is not everybody has all control over that structure. And so I think some of the questions I have are around, how can organizational policy help with that? How can job descriptions help with that? Job design help with everyone finding a little bit more balance in their day and their time. Any thoughts about that, Denise and Peggy? Like, do you structure the jobs of your case managers and the like such that, is it 8 hours of case management? Is it, you know, how do you think about the work?
It is 8 hours of case management. I mean, it's in the office, it's out in the field if they have to do visits. And, you know, they really organize their own calendars. But as for me, you know, when I'm scheduling meetings with our team or scheduling our supervisions, of course, I'm taking a look at their calendar and taking that into consideration. I'm not just working on what works best for my calendar, you know, I'm looking at theirs as well. But like when our team meetings, you know, I've asked, hey, what would be best? Would you guys prefer we have it in the morning, midday, at the end of the day? You know, and staff have said we prefer it early in the morning, because once we get started, it's like, hey, then we got to stop and go to a meeting. At least we get it done in the morning, and then after that we continue with our day and there's no interruptions. So just getting feedback on what works best for the team, you know, when with their own, you know, responsibilities is what I take into consideration a lot. I try to do that and put their calendars before mine, because I know they have a lot going on. So as myself, but I think I have more control what I can do and switch things around versus what they can. Because they do a lot of reoccurring appointments, and, you know, I would hate for them to have to change it because of this one time I need a meeting. But, you know, if it's something I can control, I try to help them out in that way. If it's something that, you know, the organization's having a meeting, sorry, I can't do that. But, you know, if it's something that's mandatory, happens every once in a while, then it's just learning how to be flexible and, you know, working with everybody else and everybody's schedules.
Yeah, you know, we have a senior leadership shared calendar, so that when we need to schedule an off schedule meeting, we try to kind of be like my executive assistant does it. So she looks at everybody's calendar and then maybe even doubly checks, does this work for everyone? It's a little bit frustrating because we often end up changing times, or, you know, it's not perfect for everybody. So again, that, you know, the grace that we try to give each other and remind each other of. And then, you know, if it doesn't work for everyone, is there another way to get to the end goal, right? If we have a decision to make or a policy, but we can't all be together at the same time, can we restructure and but still give people space to weigh in to make the best decision? So that I think the flexibility is really important, and kind of this collective understanding of we have to make a decision, what works best for everyone. And if, you know, if somebody has something come up, then we go and they say, hey, go ahead without me and I'll weigh in. So again, I have a hard time with structure. We need structure, but I think it's always important to have that flexibility and as much of a collective decision-making in a diverse environment as possible. And just understand not everybody's going to be happy, and you know, just do our best to address it, but also the over communication, right? Because some people have really strong feelings about things. I'll even say to our team, the team that works with me, you know what, I don't need to weigh in. You all make the decision. I'll go with what you know, what's best. Or you really don't want me to weigh in, like, just make your decision and I will honor it and support it. So I think the flexibility is important, and also understanding what's critical that everybody be there and what's less critical, you know, being very clear and transparent about that.
Yeah, when thinking about communication, and this has come up in several questions, is just, you know, how do we think about the structure of communication in a different way in order to enhance resiliency and, you know, among staff across an organization. And, you know, Peggy and Denise, you've kind of touched upon this several times about just, you know, messaging, consistent messaging, over messaging, but also, you know, in different formats, right? Like, so thinking about, just some people need that in-person communication. Other people who do great by emails. Other people need it sort of in huddles or in team meetings or during supervision, outside of supervision, right? There's all these different options for how and when we communicate. What I think is also really interesting, and culturally we've seen a shift as of late for improving sort of self-care, is also when not to communicate. So more and more from an organizational perspective, organizations are creating policies and procedures around sort of work hours and what framework that's in. And then outside of deemed work hours, if you're an individual who wants to work alternative hours or do different things, great. If that's, okay for your job and position in your organization. But, certain organizations will say, between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., if you have an email that you need to send out, go ahead and click the feature like in Outlook to delay that email so that it sends out again at 8 a.m. So if you're somebody who's up and working at 10 p.m., that, that night it won't go out then. And just different kinds of ways to structure communication is really coming up as we think about resiliency and burnout, right? That constant, sometimes the flip of the constant communications and constantly being on for work can be really draining. So there's a balance here.
It seems to me that, I was going to say, it seems to me that also relates to stress management and stress reduction. And we have a question in the chat around how do we do some of those things to help address stress as well. So we can connect it also to stress management. I think that would be wonderful. How do we reduce acute and chronic stress in our daily and regular work?
One of the things I do sometimes with my team is if they tell me, oh, I got this email this time, I'm like, why is your phone even in your bedroom? Like none of my business. But, I'll say, well, don't you turn your phone off and put it in another room so it doesn't bother you? Like, if I'm reaching out to you, don't let me reach out to you. But, it's challenging because also I have a team where some like to work in the later hours, or they do their writing or their, financials or whatever late at night because they don't have interruptions. And so it's hard when you have a team that have very different styles, some that are very verbal, need to process things verbally, some that don't want to, they just send me an email, just cut to the chase. I don't want to be in a long meeting. It's very, very challenging for us as leaders and supervisors to figure out, a collective way of communicating when we all have diverse styles of communicating. And that's where, just encouraging people to be gentle with each other and to figure out within that diversity. I mean, that's also the challenge of, different work hours. When you want to have an equitable workplace, and you have people that have very different jobs, some that actually, most of our staff have to work in the office. And that's been challenging for us organizationally because people have had personal issues and have wanted to work remotely. And we have very few positions that you can work remotely. And that's been challenging. We've lost some staff because of that. But the work we do is relational. And most of it really requires in-person engagement. And I can just say it's an ongoing challenge for us to carry out our work. And we want a diverse workplace. We want to be challenged with having diversity of opinions and experiences on identities and all of that. But it's not easy, right? It's great because for me, it's rich, it's diverse, it keeps me thinking, and it challenges me and all of us. And it should be representative of the world in which we are, but it's not easy.
I think, for sort of stress management, and I saw, in the chat, somebody was saying like, I really, there's actually many people who are asking to know just how do you take a pause for yourself? How do you take a moment to recenter, refocus, relax. I just want to draw attention that HHRC put together a really wonderful collection of mindful breathing techniques. And I'm going to go ahead and share that link right now in the chat that I think are really doable throughout the workday to just take a few minutes, click on one of them. There's square breathing, there's diaphragmatic breathing, and be able to just sort of recenter, refocus. I kind of think about it like it's like slowly building, like, I don't know if anyone's ever seen Nickelodeon and the green slime. Like I have that visual in my head of like the workday and the stress kind of builds up. And before you know it, if you don't do anything about it, it's oozing out, like whether you want it to or not, and in ways that you don't even foresee. So we've got to figure out ways to I got to remove some of this green slime here and there and figure that out. And so we each have things that are going to work for us and things that are not. It's about figuring out what's going to be in your own personalized toolbox. It's also organizationally, how do we enable our staff to feel comfortable to do this throughout the workday? Are there opportunities to message people and say, hey, just checking in, want to know, if you take some time, if you've taken some time today to take a break, or to do, to chat with a colleague, or to facilitate time for that. One particular organization I'm thinking of, in New Jersey, decided that they would ring a mindful bell at 1 o'clock every day, no matter what was happening in their health centers. And they had 9 health centers across New Jersey. They would 1 o'clock at every one of their centers ring a bell and ask everyone to just take a breath. Now, granted, there's going to be certain people that are in crisis, or certain urgent and emergent situations that happen at that time. Those people know that they can continue to do what they need to do. But for the rest, including their clients, this was a really wonderful messaging around, hey, this is important. This is a part of your overall health and well-being. And we're going to take the time to do that. And it happened, and it happened consistently. And more people would take that time and pause. It was literally, I think, no more than a minute long. And it was really wonderful. So there's all sorts of different, again, things that we can do. I do want to draw you back to the guide, because at the end of the guide, there's a whole resources section. Again, the link that I sent in the chat with those breathing techniques or exercises are in there. But there's also, many other different things that you can do.
I love that minute pause, and really appreciate that you also said, so it's both staff and the participants that are a part of that. So what a wonderful way to also model some of the things that we're doing with Peggy that you talked about a few minutes ago, that building everyone's strengths and resiliencies together in community in ways that can have an impact on our days. I think that's a beautiful pause. I know that there are other organizations, ours included, Laura, where there's every week there's a wellness or mindfulness, 15, 30 minutes in the day that people can drop in on and do as well. AIDS Project I worked at a long time ago, we had a complementary therapies room that was ostensibly for individuals who were participants and clients of the program, but it was also available to staff. So to come in and do, a chair massage and those kinds of things once a week, that was done in partnership with some of the bodywork organizations. So I think that we can be creative in also partnering with some of our community partners to find ways to bring wellness in, or now virtually, because again, many of these things, even though there are relational, some of us who are working remotely can participate in that, moment of yoga, moment of whatever, remotely as well, that gives us a chance to take a break. So.
Yeah, and organizations such as ours, but many other organizations are doing sort of these relaxation and resilience pauses of the week, which is what we call it at the National Council. It's 15 minutes, and like Liz said, there's a variety of different things that we do from week to week, so that it's, people can drop in if they want to make the time for it, which is wonderful. And there's a variety to choose from. So one week might be focused around doing chair yoga. The next week might be dancing with like music playing, and we're just all dancing on, on screen, off screen, or however you want to do it. We'll do different nutrition conversations. So there's really a little bit of anything and everything for people. Everyone, but making the important piece is that the time is made for people to be able to do that and to join. Again, from an organizational perspective. And for me, that resonates with, the systemic sort of approaches help enable then the individuals to then take the steps that they need to say, yes, I'm going to dedicate 15 minutes and actually join this, right? So having that sort of partnered approach between organization and individual to be able to carve out that time. Another thing I just want to mention too, that I think is really useful for compassion fatigue and burnout, is having transitional time between work and personal life. So thinking about like, when does your workday begin and end? And then when do you transition to the workday? And some people, that is a very gray area, right? So, is there an opportunity to figure out and shift those boundaries a little bit? And is there a way you can transition your sort of mentality, your state between, working with a participant in the program and sort of being out in the field and doing what you get to do, to then making your journey home? Is there something that you can do, sort of a ritual you can do, whether it's listening to a type of music, reading a book, or maybe just doing deep breathing, like in between what's the end of the workday and sort of the start of your personal day? Like, is there something you can do for yourself, or just to switch gears? So, just some more kind of thoughts about that. And we'd love, continue to kind of put those ideas, if you have them, in the chat. We have a few minutes left. So before we kind of transition back to Jen for our parting words, thank you, Denise and Peggy, so much for being here with Liz and I. We feel so fortunate to have this time with you. Any particular other comments that you want to make before we end for the day?
Well, one of my thoughts was, I was kind of like, it's hard, I'll just say it's hard because stuff comes up and I'm responsible, right? So, and that's the other thing of resiliency. If your staff reaches out to you after hours, whatever that is, part of enabling them to be resilient is being present with them and helping them with a decision or making a decision. So, but my word, I have one word that helps me in that transition, both going to work and going home, is God or dog. But in my case, it's dog. I have a dog that just reminds me, is just, unconditional love, but also makes me laugh and helps me realize, I'm not essential. I'm significant most of the time, not all of the time, right? So I really love that, Laura, that like each of us needs to figure out what that is. And even if we have to transition back to work when it's not technically work hours, make sure that we still have that, poem or breathing or yoga or dog or cat or whatever it is to help us transition back. That's what I try to practice. It's like, okay, yeah, I need to be calm and present, but then I also need to let go, right? And sometimes in our work, when it does, when it shape shifts around the hours, it's like having those strategies available so that when there's a crisis, you address it, then disconnect from that crisis.
Excellent. All right. Well, go ahead, Denise. Yes, please.
I was just going to say, always remember, take care of you. You matter. Your health is your priority. And one of the things I did read not that long ago that said, without your health, nothing else matters. So always put yourself as a priority, and always learn your body and listen to it because it's telling you something. If you especially when you need to take those breaks, when you're feeling exhausted or burnt out, listen to it. Work is always there. We always appreciate people that come in, even when they're not feeling well, but we'd rather you stay home and take care of you.
Yeah, and there are so many nuances to all of this, and we understand that. And we understand that we're we're talking in bigger and broader strokes. For some of you, you'll have to spend time in supervision, checking in with people and peers to really figure out what's going to work for you. So I do want to encourage you, if this feels overwhelming or unmanageable or unreachable even, don't give up, but try, make time to even just try to problem solve it and brainstorm it with a supervisor, with a peer, with a friend, with a family member, whomever you can kind of connect to then make your own sort of personalized plan, in addition to hopefully the organizational and systemic stuff that we hope will happen. Thank you all so much. We're going to go ahead here and I'll turn it back over to you, Jen.
Great. Thank you all so much. Just wanted to echo what you're saying. We just value this partnership so much with the National Council for Mental Wellbeing for their work in helping us put together the guide and the infographic and these great discussions. There's a lot that we can all collectively learn and take away from this. So thank you so much for joining us. Amy's added the evaluation link in the chat. If you'd like a certificate of participation, we appreciate you. And until next time, reach out to us at the Homeless and Housing Resource Center if we can be of any additional support. Thanks so much and have a great day.